students are daring
Urban Legends, Scene 6, Take 2.
to film them.
The movie is about a serial killer whose murders are all based on urban legends.
That's pretty cool.
Dude, that looks so real.
Not enough blood.
You don't think it was real?
OJ left more blood than that on the Bronco. Paranoia. Wrong man accused. How the lines blur between fantasy and reality.
Gotcha.
She's one hell of an actress, ain't she?
Urban Legends, Final Cut.
Welcome back to the 10th annual Halloween special. I hope you guys are having a really fun time with me this year. I am. Tonight we're talking about a very strange movie. It's called Urban Legends Final Cut. This film came out in the year 2000 and was the sequel to the 1998 film Urban Legend, which I talked about earlier in the special. This film centers on a group of film students who are all vying for the famous Hitchcock Award. And unfortunately for them, a killer wearing a fencing mask is picking them off one by one. The film was directed by John Ottman, who's most known for his film editing and musical scores. And it was written by Paul Harris Boardman and Scott Derrickson, the writing team behind Hellraiser Inferno, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and Deliver Us from Evil. And of course, Derrickson has had a very good career behind the camera for some of the films I just mentioned, as well as Sinister, Doctor Strange, and most recently, The Black Phone. So the team behind this movie is actually great, and that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk about it, because I've seen the film before many years ago, and I kind of dismissed it, and I wanted to rewatch it because sometimes when a director, a writer, actor, whatever, becomes famous later in their career for something, you start to look back at their earlier career with a different viewpoint. It's unfortunate, but very true. It happens all the time. Look at John Carpenter. People initially dismissed Dark Star, and after Assault on Precinct 13 and Halloween and The Thing and all kinds of great movies, people now kind of look back on Dark Star a little differently and they show it much more respect. Whenever a filmmaker has a big hit in the middle of their career or later in their career and you never heard of them until then, you can almost always look back on their earlier work and see a starving artist trying to say something, trying to come out, and they're just not respected enough yet. They don't have the clout to make those decisions yet. They have studio people over their heads telling them what to do, telling them what to cut. But you can see that there was an attempt. And when I watch Urban Legends Final Cut, it is a studio hack job in a lot of ways, and you can see some really stupid ideas, but I can also see some filmmakers who are trying to make a good movie, and one that's completely different from the first. Since you follow film students who are trying to complete a thesis screenplay and then eventually direct a film, and maybe win this Hitchcock Award, which would give them some money to jumpstart their career, if you're a film lover, the movie is kind of helped by that and also hindered by that, because you're going to appreciate things they say, there's going to be references you understand, especially if you're a filmmaker, but there is something ever so slightly highbrow about it and slightly alienating. I wouldn't go so far as to say elitist, but it does feel like the movie sort of pushes away people who don't really have an interest in film and just want to watch a slasher. There's a surprisingly brutal kill early on, and one of the very few that actually references a real-life urban legend, when someone wakes up in a bathtub filled with ice and realizes their kidney has been taken. I can't show you the clip because YouTube has been very strict about monetization lately, but she gets pulled through a window, that window breaks, and the shards of the window are used to decapitate her, and I was like, damn, that's actually pretty awesome. There's also a great idea early on when a reel gets spliced into a student film of an actual death. It feels very Peeping Tom-esque. There's definitely something here. You can almost see little bits of Sinister coming to life. I will say that I think the lead of this movie, not just by performance, but also character, is better than the original Urban Legend. Jennifer Morrison plays a film student who's trying to get her career off the ground, and she's battling the stigma that comes with nepotism. Her father was a well-known documentarian, and she's trying to keep that from everybody so she can just make it on her own steam. But a few people do eventually find out, and so that makes things harder for her. Now, yeah, there's part of me that's like, I don't really feel that bad for you if you're in a film school because your dad was super famous and rich, but the film does a good job of exploring the downside of that as well. It's not entirely how we tend to view that, which is 100% negatively. It is sometimes difficult for people who have famous relatives to make a name for themselves or escape from that person's shadow. One of the only characters that returns from the original film is Loretta Devine, and I was happy to see her back because she was one of my favorite parts of the original. Eva Mendes is also in this film in a very early performance for her. When I watch this film, I can't help but appreciate many aspects of it, but there's also part of it that is sort of battling with itself. I think for this movie to really work as well as it could have, it should have been funnier. It should have been far more satirical than it is. And there are times where the movie seems to understand that. For instance, a hilariously over-the-top DP is murdered with a lens. That's funny. It's just that the film doesn't really treat it funny. It kind of treats it a little serious. If the movie took itself less seriously, especially towards the reveal of who the killer is, I think this movie could actually be pretty damn funny and good, and more along the lines of something like Bodies, 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 or even the first Scream. But it's just not in touch with its humorous side enough, and that is the one thing that I think keeps this movie from being kind of good, because by no means was this movie well reviewed. All the sites with the numbers and letters don't like it. IMDb is like a 4.3. I think Rotten Tomatoes is a 9%. Metacritic is like a 16 or something. Like, nobody fucking liked this movie. I think the cinema score was like a D+, which is really fucking bad. So, for whatever reason, in the year 2000, this movie landed with a giant dud. And nobody really talks about it that much anymore. But I do think that there is something here. You can see them vaulting and flipping and trying to do something amazing. They just don't quite stick the landing. But still, having watched both films back to back, there are parts of this movie that I like more than the first. I already mentioned it has a better protagonist, but some of the kills are better too. I like that they can't hear the DP being killed because they're all recording a scream. Everyone has to scream into the boom, and because of that, they don't hear the guy being murdered. But there's a moment right at the end where she does hear him for just a second, and the edit here is actually pretty strong. It reminds me of Blowout with John Travolta, which is really good, and if you've never seen it, you need to fucking watch that movie. But still, there's a lot of things about the film that don't really make sense. For instance, near the end of the movie, our protagonist is led to a tower because someone turned the lights on. How did they know that she was going to wake up right then, look out the window, and see those lights? That just doesn't track for me. And if you've never seen the film, I am going to spoil who the killer is now, so that is your warning. This also could have been much better if the film was more of a comedy. Ellis from Die Hard is a secret villain in this movie too. He's concocted an elaborate scheme that involves a lot of jealousy and rage based off of the fact that he should have had a successful film career and it was never given to him, and so he killed one of his students and has continued to go around killing all of his students and just created a lot of problems for everybody because he really wants to be a director and he thinks he needs more respect than he's given. This could be really fucking hilarious if the movie just leaned into it a little more, but it doesn't. But there's even some good ideas in this sequence. Like, for instance, they have one real gun, but it gets scattered amongst a bunch of prop guns and they all have to find the real one. It's a nice trick on an old gag we've seen many times. I'm reminded of Temple of Doom when there's a diamond surrounded by a bunch of ice cubes. And there's actually a pretty good fake out in the end. Throughout the entire film, there's a PA who everyone treats like shit and people are so mean to, and he's very depressed, and it seems like that's probably going to be the killer. It's too obvious to be the killer, of course, but near the end of the film, when our hero is accepting the Hitchcock Award, this dude pulls out a goddamn sniper rifle. Loretta Devine shoots and kills this kid, and you realize that it's actually just a movie they're shooting, and that surprised me. I honestly didn't expect that, because I don't know, it just was so abrupt. Like, it was a really good lead-in to it, and I won't lie, that actually got me. I also like the very end with the original killer, played by Rebecca Gayheart, returning as a nurse in the hospital where the new killer is. And a clever touch from John Ottman is that the music playing here is from the TV show Alfred Hitchcock Presents. No film written by that writing team is going to be completely devoid of anything of quality. I think there's a lot of really good ideas here. It's just that it didn't quite come together, and whether that was studio interference or whatever, I don't know. I would love to read the very, very first draft of Urban Legend's final cut and see what that film was going to be. But it's nowhere near as bad as people say. Its reputation is not warranted. And I think, like many of the films I've discussed this year on the special, it has aged a little better since they don't make horror films on this scale as much anymore. So guys, I'm curious to know what you think of Urban Legend's final cut. I do think it's a film that is worth talking about. I don't think it's just some throwaway slasher. I think it has some good ideas there. Guys, thank you so much as always for continuing to watch the 10th annual Halloween special. Look forward to more videos very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.